What if the battlefield you were born into was not a nation, but a household? What if the politics you must survive are not fought with armies, but with manipulation, guilt, and control? This is the reality of those who grow up in narcissistic families. While most people imagine power struggles in palaces and courts, Niccolo Machiavelli knew that the dynamics of control exist everywhere, especially in the private sphere. A narcissistic parent, sibling, or relative is not so different from a corrupt prince. They demand loyalty, enforce submission, and thrive on keeping others small. But Machiavelli offers us something radical, a way to see these family struggles not through the lens of victimhood, but through the eyes of a strategist. This guide is not about confronting them with emotion, nor about expecting them to change. It is about surviving, enduring, and, when possible, escaping with your power intact. Recognize the nature of power in the family. Machiavelli warned rulers to never deceive themselves about the nature of men, because the gravest mistakes are born not from the enemy's cunning, but from our own illusions. The same principle applies to a narcissistic family. To survive, you must strip away every comforting lie and see the system for what it truly is, a miniature court where power is hoarded, not shared. In such families, love is not given freely. It is rationed out like a scarce resource, used to bind loyalty and obedience. Approval functions as currency, traded in exchange for compliance. Silence is demanded, not as peace, but as submission. The narcissistic parent or dominant figure becomes a petty tyrant whose authority thrives not on fairness, but on fear, guilt, and manufactured dependency. Once you recognize that their affection is conditional and their control deliberate, you stop expecting warmth where only calculation exists. This recognition is painful, but it is the first weapon of liberation. Machiavelli would insist that just as a prince must study the terrain of his state, you must map the political landscape of your household. Who holds the crown? Who enforces their will? Who acts as the loyal minister, spreading rumors, enforcing punishments, or rewarding compliance? And who plays the role of the scapegoat, the sacrificial victim offered up to maintain the tyrant's image of control? Each member, whether willingly or unconsciously, becomes part of the system. By observing carefully, you begin to see that what once felt personal is in truth political. The cruelty was never about you as an individual. It was about power. This realization transforms your perspective. You stop pleading for fairness, because Machiavelli teaches us that fairness is never the foundation of authority. You stop seeking reason, because reason cannot penetrate the fortress of insecurity and control. Above all, you stop waiting for them to change, because tyrants rarely relinquish their power voluntarily. Clarity itself becomes freedom, for when you see the family not as a sanctuary, but as a state ruled by domination, you no longer fall prey to the illusions that once bound you.
2. The mask of obedience. Machiavelli understood that when a ruler's power is absolute, direct defiance often leads not to victory, but to destruction. In a narcissistic family, this truth plays out in quieter but equally devastating forms. Open rebellion does not bring liberation, it brings retaliation. The narcissistic parent or family member cannot tolerate defiance because it threatens the illusion of their control. Their weapons are not armies, but guilt, shame, withdrawal of affection, and the relentless manufacturing of conflict. Every attempt to argue, defend yourself, or demand fairness becomes fuel for their dominance. To meet them head-on is to fight a battle on terrain they control, under rules they designed, and with weapons they have mastered. Machiavelli would warn you, such battles are rarely won. The wise response is not reckless defiance, but cunning strategy. You must learn the mask of obedience. The mask is not cowardice, it is survival. Just as Machiavelli advised rulers that it is unnecessary to be truly virtuous so long as one appears virtuous, you must learn that it is unnecessary to be truly submissive so long as you appear submissive. A nod, a smile, a silent agreement can buy you peace while protecting the freedom of your inner world. Outward compliance disarms the tyrant, convincing them they still hold authority, while inwardly you are untouchable. This duplicity is not hypocrisy, it is self-defense. Every appearance of obedience buys you time, shields you from unnecessary punishment, and conserves the energy you will need for your greater goal, building independence. To drop the mask too soon is to invite attack before you are ready to withstand it. To wear it wisely is to outlast their reign, waiting patiently until the moment comes to slip away, not as a victim in battle, but as a strategist who has chosen the terms of their own freedom. 3. Withhold what they feed on. Machiavelli observed that a ruler's strength is sustained not only by his armies, but by the resources that keep those armies loyal. Without food, gold, and morale, even the most powerful prince collapses. The same logic applies to narcissists. Their power over you is sustained by the emotional supplies you provide. They do not feed on food or coin, but on your reactions. Your anger, your tears, your desperate attempts to explain yourself. These are their banquet. Every time you rise to the bait, every time you explode in frustration or crumble in despair, you give them what they hunger for, proof that they still control you. To break free, you must cut off their supply. You must become emotionally impenetrable, a fortress without gates, a well whose waters they cannot drink from. This does not mean becoming numb or inhuman. It means mastering your presence in their company. When they provoke, you respond with calm neutrality. When they hurl accusations, you offer nothing for them to twist. Short replies, a steady tone, silence if necessary. When they demand your confession, you give them little more than polite indifference. It is not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to display it. Machiavelli would recognize this as a deliberate strategy. Just as a besieged city denies its enemies supplies until the aggressor withers, you deny the narcissist their emotional sustenance until their power weakens. They may escalate at first, scrambling to reclaim control, but in time they reveal what they truly are, dependent on your reactions, incapable of maintaining their illusion of dominance without you. When you starve them of drama, you shift the balance of power silently, without open rebellion. And in that silence lies your greatest strength.
4. Guard your inner world. Machiavelli warned that a prince must never reveal the depths of his intentions, for once your enemies know your plans, they can destroy them before they ever take shape. In a narcissistic family, this wisdom becomes essential for survival. Every dream you voice, every vulnerability you reveal, every private thought you share becomes a weapon in their hands. They will mock your ambitions, minimize your victories, and remind you of your failures not to guide you, but to keep you tethered to their control. They thrive on knowledge of your inner world because it gives them leverage. The more they know about what matters to you, the easier it is to twist the knife where it hurts most. To survive, you must learn the art of secrecy, not as isolation, but as protection. Guarding your inner world means building an invisible fortress around your deepest self. You do not need to announce this fortress. You simply stop granting access to those who have proven they will abuse it. Share less, observe more. Speak in generalities when pressed. Offer only the surface while keeping the substance within. This is not paranoia, it is prudence. Machiavelli would say that even the most trusting ruler must keep his true designs hidden lest allies turn into enemies. The same is true in the family ruled by narcissism. To them, your inner life must appear shallow and unremarkable, while in reality it is rich, expansive, and untouchable. Build that world in solitude, in journals they cannot read, in friendships beyond their reach, in pursuits they cannot control. In time, this private kingdom becomes your greatest defense, a realm where their influence cannot touch you, where their criticisms echo without effect, and where you nurture the independence that will one day set you free. 5. The art of selective distance. Machiavelli taught that not every battle must be fought head-on, for the wise prince knows when to engage and when to retreat. In a narcissistic family, constant exposure is itself a form of battle. You are placed in the arena where manipulation, criticism, and control play out endlessly. The more accessible you are, the more opportunities they have to wear you down. Survival, therefore, requires distance. Not always absolute, but selective, measured, and intentional. This distance is not cowardice, but strategy. By reducing your availability, you limit their opportunities to feed on your energy. You control the frequency and depth of your contact, creating spaces where their influence cannot reach. This can mean physical withdrawal, spending less time under their roof, avoiding unnecessary encounters, or emotional withdrawal, where you're present in body but unyielding in spirit, refusing to grant them access to your inner self. The art lies in subtlety. Machiavelli would never advise a prince to declare his retreat to the enemy, for that would invite pursuit. Instead, the wise ruler moves quietly, gradually, leaving the opponent disoriented. In the same way, you need not loudly announce your boundaries to a narcissistic family. To do so is to give them a new battlefield on which to attack. Simply live them. Decline invitations without explanation. Excuse yourself early. Answer with brevity. Each quiet step creates a buffer of freedom, and if circumstances allow, Machiavelli would urge you to prepare your eventual exit in silence. Tyrants are never told of a coup before it happens. They awaken one day to find their power gone. In your case, liberation may mean leaving the household entirely, or establishing the life beyond their reach. Whether temporary or permanent, selective distance weakens their control while strengthening your autonomy. It is the shield that allows you to preserve your strength for the battles that truly matter. The battle of building a life that belongs only to you. 6. Divide and neutralize alliances. Machiavelli understood that no ruler maintains power alone. Even the most tyrannical prince relies on networks of allies, informants, and enforcers to sustain his authority. In a narcissistic family, the same machinery exists, though it wears the disguise of blood and kinship. The narcissistic parent often recruits allies within the household, siblings who become the golden children, relatives who act as enablers, or family members who play the role of informants, carrying back your words and actions to the throne. These alliances ensure that the narcissist's control extends beyond their own voice, creating an environment where you are never sure who is truly on your side. To survive, you must see these alliances for what they are: instruments of power, not bonds of unconditional loyalty. The first step is to refuse the roles they assign. A narcissistic family thrives on polarization. One child praised, another scapegoated. One relative exalted, another condemned. The trap lies in believing these roles are real, when in truth they are tools of manipulation designed to divide and conquer. Machiavelli would counsel you to step outside the game. Do not fight your siblings for approval. Do not seek validation from enablers. Do not defend yourself before the court of family opinion. Instead, adopt a posture of quiet neutrality. Speak little, observe much, and give no fuel to their manufactured rivalries. When you refuse to play the part they have written for you, the script begins to fall apart. But neutrality does not mean blindness. Just as a ruler studies his enemies, not to trust them, but to understand them, you must watch these alliances carefully. Who repeats what they hear? Who shifts loyalties when convenient? Who enforces the narcissist's will most zealously? To know this is to know the machinery of control. And when you know it, you are no longer a pawn. You become a strategist. By neither feeding rivalries nor exposing your true thoughts, you neutralize the alliances that once threatened you. In time, they may turn on each other, for alliances built on fear and conditional love are brittle. When that happens, you will be the only one who has remained steady, untouched by their chaos, because you mastered the Machiavellian art of division, not by waging war, but by refusing to be conquered. 7. Build power outside the family. Machiavelli declared that a prince's true security rests not on borrowed arms or the goodwill of others, but on the forces he builds for himself. A ruler who relies on mercenaries is doomed, for their loyalty can vanish the moment gold runs out. The same principle applies in a narcissistic family. If your sense of worth, identity, or stability depends on their approval, you are at their mercy. They can withhold it at will, leaving you powerless. To survive, and eventually to escape, you must cultivate strength beyond their reach. This means developing your own sources of power: education, career, friendships, skills, and networks that exist entirely outside the family's grasp. Every book you read, every ability you sharpen, every bond you form with those who truly respect you becomes a weapon in your arsenal, a soldier in your personal army.
The narcissistic system thrives on dependency. They want you to believe you cannot survive without their resources, guidance, or validation. But Machiavelli would tell you that independence is never granted. It is built. Each step you take towards self-reliance weakens their control. This does not always happen overnight. Sometimes it begins in small acts. You earn your own income. You form friendships that are free from manipulation. You pursue passions they do not understand and therefore cannot corrupt. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a fortress of independence. And once you have fortified yourself with resources and allies outside the family, their threats lose their sting. They may withhold affection, but you no longer starve. They may try to shame you, but you no longer believe them. They may attempt to isolate you, but you have already built a world beyond their walls. Machiavelli would remind you, a ruler who builds his strength on his own foundations is unshakable. In the same way, the day you no longer depend on their approval is the day you become truly untouchable. 8. Learn the timing of liberation. Machiavelli warned that even the strongest ruler could fall if he acted without regard for timing. To strike too soon is to risk destruction. To wait too long is to let opportunity pass. Liberation from a narcissistic family follows this same law. The desire to break free can burn so fiercely that you may be tempted to rush into open rebellion, confronting them, exposing them, demanding change. But Machiavelli would caution you. Tyrants do not yield to moral appeals, and they do not crumble at the sound of reason. If you move too early, when you still depend on them financially, emotionally, or socially, you place yourself at their mercy once again. Instead, the wise strategist prepares in silence. You build resources, you create distance, you form alliances outside their reach. You plan quietly, never announcing your intentions, because to declare your exit is to invite sabotage. Yet Machiavelli also knew that hesitation can be fatal. A prince who waits forever for the perfect moment never acts, and in that paralysis he loses both opportunity and strength. The same danger applies here. You cannot remain indefinitely within a system that erodes your spirit, hoping for ideal conditions that may never come. There comes a moment when the pain of staying outweighs the fear of leaving. That moment is your call to act,
not impulsively, but decisively. When it arrives, you do not seek permission. You do not offer long explanations. You do not beg for their understanding. Machiavelli would say that fortune favors the bold, and in your case, boldness is the quiet, unshakable step toward independence. Liberation is not something they grant you. It is something you seize. The timing is yours to decide, but once the moment comes, hesitation must end. To walk away when you are ready is not abandonment. It is the fulfillment of the strategy you have been crafting all along. 9. Transform pain into power. Machiavelli himself knew humiliation. He was betrayed, imprisoned, tortured, and exiled from the very courts he once served. Yet out of that pain, he wrote The Prince, a book so enduring that his name became synonymous with power itself. This is the Machiavellian lesson. Suffering, when harnessed, is not weakness, but raw material for greatness. In a narcissistic family, pain is inevitable. You will be criticized unfairly, overlooked deliberately, and punished for crimes you did not commit. To live in such an environment is to endure wounds both visible and invisible. But here lies your opportunity. You can allow that pain to define you, trapping you in bitterness, or you can do what Machiavelli did, turn the wounds into wisdom.
Pain sharpens perception. It forces you to see the hidden motives in people's actions, the masks they wear, the power games they play. While others drift through life blind to manipulation, you have been trained by fire to recognize it instantly. Pain builds resilience. Every insult endured, every disappointment survived becomes proof of your capacity to withstand what once felt unbearable. And pain fuels transformation. Many who escape narcissistic families rise to extraordinary independence precisely because they learned early that their survival could not depend on others. Machiavelli would say that fortune is cruel, but cruelty itself can be turned into an ally if you learn from it. The betrayal that once crushed you becomes the lesson that prevents future betrayal. The rejection that once silenced you becomes the force that drives your self-reliance. The suffering that once seemed meaningless becomes the furnace in which your strength is forged. In this way, you rob the narcissistic system of its greatest victory. For while they sought to weaken you, they inadvertently trained you to become unbreakable. 10. Rewrite the story. Machiavelli understood that power is not only in what you do, but in how it is perceived. A prince can win battles, but if history tells the wrong story, his victories are forgotten and his legacy destroyed. In a narcissistic family, you are often cast in roles not of your choosing: scapegoat, servant, troublemaker, or black sheep. For years, you may have believed these roles, internalizing the narrative that others wrote for you. But survival and ultimate freedom require rewriting the story on your own terms. The family's version of events is designed to maintain their control, to keep you trapped in guilt, shame, or dependency. You must recognize it as fiction, a script imposed to manipulate, and begin authoring your own narrative. Rewriting the story does not happen all at once. It begins internally, with the conscious decision to define yourself by your own values, choices, and experiences, rather than by the approval or condemnation of those who sought to control you. Machiavelli would remind you that perception rules the world. The prince who controls the story shapes reality. In your case, controlling the story means refusing to let their version of you dictate your sense of worth, your ambitions, or your identity. It means embracing the truth that you survived, that you endured, and that you are capable of independence. Over time, you reinforce this story through action, through building a life that reflects your power, integrity, and freedom. Each step you take outside their sphere strengthens the narrative of self-determination. You become the architect of your own destiny, no longer a character in their play, but the author of your life. And when you finally see yourself in this light, Machiavellian wisdom is complete. You have survived the tyranny, outsmarted the manipulator, and claimed the most lasting power of all, the power to define yourself. Machiavelli wrote The Prince to teach rulers how to survive in dangerous courts, but the same wisdom applies to those raised in dangerous families. The narcissistic household is its own kind of kingdom, ruled by fear, manipulation, and illusion. But by seeing clearly, masking when necessary, withholding what feeds them, and building power outside their reach, you can survive and eventually thrive. Remember, survival is not submission. It is strategy. And strategy, over time, becomes freedom. If you are living in such a family, let this be your reminder. You are not powerless. You are not destined to remain under their rule. You can outthink, outlast, and outgrow them. And when you do, your greatest victory will not be revenge. It will be the quiet, unshakable life you build for yourself beyond their control.